Under the leadership of George Washington, American colonists readied themselves to protect New York from the mighty British Empire in June 1776. Washington understood that the best way to achieve independence was to survive rather than win outright against a strong army and a formidable naval fleet. The Continental Army became a disciplined force under the guidance of Prussian General von Steuben, foreign alliances, and guerrilla warfare. They persisted in the face of overwhelming odds, eventually winning a crucial victory at Yorktown that guaranteed America's independence and encapsulated the essence of the American soldier. The original United States Army prepared to defend New York in June 1776. The city is under siege by the most significant task force ever assembled by the British Navy. 32,000 combatants were transported by 170 troop transport boats, 20 frigates, and 10 powerful ships of the line, and prepared to invade and end the American Revolution before it began. The sheer might and sophistication of the British Navy and military are difficult to comprehend today. Despite having none of that, the colonists, the group that would eventually become the Americans, decided to fight a war against the most powerful military force on the planet. The first regular volunteer American army to serve as the backbone of resistance was authorized by the Continental Congress a year earlier. At the beginning of the war, the average private's monthly salary was about $6.60, a significant amount of money for the period. They ought to be outfitted. They ought to be given uniforms and weapons. They ought to receive food, a ration of beer, and everything else that a militia member would have to supply themselves. The new Continental Army is given George Washington as its commander-in-chief. He plans the defenses in Manhattan's Kips Bay. Since then, George Washington has been a model for all American officers. Because he is prepared and the only person to arrive at the First Continental Congress in his uniform. Washington gained notoriety for his service in the British-French Wars. His soldiers are a motley crew of former service members from Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. They regard him as one of them. People must be guided, not told. They must follow a leader who is brave, inspiring, and captivating. Cheering soldiers, rumbling thunder. The Second Continental Congress convened as the British task force prepared to attack New York. The delegates ratify the Declaration of Independence on July 4th. There's no going back. Would the American independence movement be able to defend its political claims on the battlefield with the help of the Continental Army? Booming cannons. Yells. The British attack on New York starts on August 27th. Thousands of 24-pound cannonballs bombard the defenders. Elite redcoat troops land at Kips Bay on September 15th. There are roughly 2 times as many Continental soldiers as poorly trained soldiers. The British are too strong for them. The men of Washington flee. There are just 3,000 men left. There are few supplies. There are many diseases. Morale is at an all-time low. Something was clear to Washington from the start of the Revolutionary War. He was not required to prevail in the Revolutionary War. All he had to do was not lose. The American Revolution is the army itself. George truly excels as a military thinker in preserving this army and preventing its destruction on the battlefield. We can't compete with the British Army, he realizes. We need to take a different approach. Washington encourages men like Daniel Morgan, a new breed of aggressive commander ready to tear up the rulebook. Kill some redcoats for us. Morgan was the mastermind behind the guerrilla warfare that the colonists waged. Many of the skilled sharpshooters Morgan hires are hunters from his native Virginia. It appears to be quite similar to hunting, which they are accustomed to. It's British soldiers now, though. We will use tactics that the British Army will not use, such as ambushes, snipers, shooting from trees, and shooting behind rocks. Morgan is in charge of 500 sharpshooters. During the Revolutionary War, most weapons were muskets, which may have been accurate to 40 yards. The long rifle, the rifle. It wasn't a novel concept that some Americans employed. A few centuries prior, it had been invented in Germany. However, the plan is for the gunsmith to begin working inside that smooth barrel in a spiral groove that runs the length of the barrel. The projectile becomes trapped in those grooves when that gun fires. As it exits the barrel, it begins to spin. It has that iconic spiral if you've ever watched a good quarterback toss a football. The ball that exits a gun will behave more like a football when those spiral grooves are installed in the barrel. Because it's spinning, it will travel a considerable distance in a straight line. The Redcoat officers and the British Native American Scouts are the two groups that the sharpshooters target. The intention is to cause confusion and mayhem. In October of 1777, the Saratoga Battle. Simon Fraser, a British general, is pursued by marksman Tim Murphy. This showdown will influence the outcome. Shots. Keep your fire going. Shot. Indistinct shouting from redcoats. The British troops are demoralized and forced to flee in confusion. They are furious that Fraser was killed. Although they perceive the assaults on officers as barbaric, the colonists view this as more than just a traditional conflict. For them, this is a fight for their freedom and very existence. The Continental Army could not capitalize on the French joining the war on the colonial side after the victory at Saratoga. They are forced to retreat to Valley Forge after losing their discipline at Germantown. The colonists have a bleak future. However, Washington still thinks he can rally for one final fight. He will regain the situation if he prevails in the upcoming conflict. To reassemble his fractured force, Washington needs assistance. Prussian Lieutenant General Baron Friedrich von Steuben, an unexpected source, gives it to him. Von Steuben was a unique individual. It is reasonable for Washington to question whether he is a general. He arrives at George Washington's house. He makes himself available. Wait to give me a paycheck. Pay me what I'm worth after you've seen what I can accomplish. What von Steuben discovered at Valley Forge astounded him. The people in Washington's army dislike being told what to do by others. Telling them that you're fighting for freedom is difficult, but hey, you better follow my instructions, or I'll whip you. Von Steuben must first get the troops to agree. Your doctrine was British, French, or Prussian, depending on your origin and colony. And he says, we can't do that anymore. He devises an American method of drilling. In his blue book, America's First Military Manual, von Steuben details everything, paying particular attention to the vicious tactics of hand-to-hand combat. In a time when men used muskets, the bayonet was a decisive weapon. He practiced with the bayonet every day because they weren't very accurate. How do you receive the shock of a bayonet charge, and how do you charge with one? Be careful. Yells. Valley Forge was abandoned by the core of a more disciplined army. People who didn't die or give up got better. They grew closer together. They gained self-assurance. In addition to creating a nation, the American Revolution also gave rise to the American soldier. Yorktown in October of 1881. The Continental Army, George Washington, and their French allies are preparing to attack the Redcoat stronghold. Booms of rockets, explosions. 3 weeks of acrimonious conflict, indistinct shouting by soldiers, battled and outnumbered, the British gave up. They will establish a siege when we consider the intricate strategies they employ. A nighttime bayonet charge, one of the battle's peaks, was not part of the Continental soldiers' kit bag at the start of the conflict, but it is now. Yorktown is the pivotal moment in the war because of this. America separates from Great Britain. George Washington became the United States' first president after winning the election. The commander-in-chief of the American military is still the president. He likely defined more aspects of American society than any other founding father. The indispensable man was discussed. That, in my opinion, is the most accurate description of any American that has ever been written. The emergence of the American soldier and the American Revolution are closely related. The American soldier's story is about fighting for a cause greater than themselves, a cause that unites all people.